Hello, everyone, and thank you so much. We've been having technical difficulties tonight, so thank you for those of you who hung in there, and I'm sorry for people who have disappeared because obviously 15 minutes is a long time to wait. So I apologize to everyone, and hopefully we'll work on the technical end of things so that the computer doesn't crash. And welcome, Christiana. Christiana Davidson from London, England, is joining us tonight, and the topic is infidelity, narcissism, and the wound of apathy. So let's begin by saying that apathy, narcissism, and cheating are very related. However, not all cheaters are narcissists. So we're going to make some distinctions tonight. And a lot of themes are going to come together because you know me, I like to connect the dots. So in case of you don't know me, my name is Dr. Judy Rosenberg. I'm the director of the Psychological Healing Center and founder of the Be the Cause Mind Map System for Healing Human Disconnect. And for those of you who have not read my book, Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect, please grab a free PDF copy of that. And you can download it to your computer or your cell phone and read it anywhere, and you will get quite a psychoeducation from a systems point of view. And Christiana has been on the team for quite some time now. I really appreciate you. She is a therapist based in London, and she's been a really great asset to the team. She specializes in healing the wounds that narcissistic mothers inflict on their daughters. It's just a topic that she particularly loves. Yes?
I do, yes.
I know you do. Okay. And so we have a wonderful team of people. So feel free to reach out to us and we will connect you with somebody that is suited to your psychological and financial needs. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit about statistics. So did you know that 30 to 40% of Americans cheat? Kind of a staggering statistic. Now, I don't know how that is across the nation, but in America, 30 to 40% of people cheat. 3% believe it's not wrong, and 90% plus consider it immoral. What's interesting to me is that most cheaters, this is an interesting fact, are 50 to 60 years old and have been married for over 20 years. So what the Freud is going on? So we're going to talk about why people cheat, and I have a list of reasons why people cheat, and then we're going to get into the narcissism, the wound of apathy, and what the Freud that has to do with this particular subject. And as most of you know, this is a call-in show, so please feel free to call in and ask questions, and yes, definitely ask away about the mind map and how your particular issue pertains to the subject. So why do people cheat? There are so many reasons, and there's no one fits all kind of answer to this. There are various reasons such as anger, revenge cheating, falling out of love, whatever that means to the couple or the person, situational or an opportunity presents itself. Then there's unmet needs and feeling rejected, and there's sexual desires. Some people's sexual appetite are not quite matched. And so since a monogamous relationship supposedly involves that sex is going to be between the other party, if one of the people in this committed relationship is not accommodating to the sexual needs of the other, that can be a form of disconnect and a form of distress to the other, and maybe even interpreted as a rejection, which we will flow through with the mind map and see how these negative core beliefs are triggered by behaviors. Then there is the idea that people like variety. Yes, people like variety. We are not necessarily coded, genetically coded for monogamy. It is a choice. And then there is low self-esteem. We talk a lot about filling the hole in the soul. Christiana, you definitely address this issue with patients. And one of the defense mechanisms is cheating, because when we feel hollow inside, empty inside, there's nothing more fulfilling for the moment than having a fresh new sexual adventure with somebody and having the dopamine and all of those love drugs just flow through the system and revitalize the person. And then there's also people that are in the marriage, but they're not, or the relationship, marriage or relationship, and they're not all that committed. Maybe they're there because they've been forced into the marriage. Maybe they're there for convenience. Maybe they're there for financial reasons. Maybe they're just there because they're waiting for the children to grow older. Maybe they're there because they have too much money invested in the marriage. There are several reasons why people stay together. And unless the reasons are solid and sustainable and come from the consciousness of desire and the consciousness of some sort of a synergy between them, that relationship is gonna fall apart, whether they're narcissistic or not. So let me define what I mean by narcissism, because there's the DSM and then there's a systems way of looking at it. I'm not big on labels. I'm not the best at pulling out the diagnostic and statistical manual and going through all the symptoms, because I see the symptoms and behaviors as an outgrowth of the cause. And the cause is the blueprint, meaning your family of origin, the way that you have been treated from birth on. The cause is multi-generational in that not only have you been treated that way by your parents, but then again, your parents were treated by your grandparents and great-grandparents and so on. And so psychopathology trickles down, and then tag you're carrying the symptoms. And one of those symptoms is acting out in the form of breaking a commitment, acting out in the form of breaking somebody's heart. So let's get into it and let's mind map a little bit, and I'll break it down, and then Christiana, I'll let you share a little bit about what you see in the treatment room, specifically with women who are not cherished by their father. And do we have a call? Do we have a call, or is, oh, that's that funny noise. We're gonna have to get all the equipment much better set up here with the noises, and I know I've had complaints about that, so we're going to work on that. So anyway, I want to mind map the whole system for everyone so that you can follow along and understand the cheating as a defense mechanism and the apathy wound and how it applies. So if you would be so kind as to put the mind map up. And I'm going to break it down for you. Thank you so much. So if you look at the top three panels, they represent the encoding into the psyche, the encoding of your family of origins treatment of you, and how you've been wounded, how you reacted to the wound, and how it then lands in that encoding department, which is panel 3, which represents all those negative core beliefs that we carry in life, such as I'm not lovable, or I'm not this enough, or that enough. And so that represents the past. Now, we've got the middle section, which is the crazy of the here and now. So in the middle section, you will see chaos and defenses and breakdowns. And why do we have chaos and defenses and breakdowns? Because things were not blueprinted correctly, and they're not sustainable. So whatever is not sustainable is basically going to fall apart. Okay, so if you've been wounded and you don't have pillars of parents who role model and nurture and attune to and mirror you, then you won't have that developed, healthy sense of self to really hold you through life and create a stable internal internal sense of self, and therefore we get triggered into chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And the goal of the mind map is to reprocess, to identify these wounds, reactions, and encodings, and then reprocess the feelings so that you are not acting out, which cheating is. It's an acting out because you're actively doing something, or an acting in, which is more of an implosion in depression and carrying those feelings deep down and really destroying yourself with choking on your own feelings, if you will. So let's start here, and I'm going to take advantage of your knowledge base in daughter mother wounds. So let's say that you've got a narcissistic mother, and now we're looking at the effects of her apathy, which is part of the theme of our show. So now she's apathetic toward her very own daughter. So what do you think that's going to do to her self-esteem?
Well, Dr. Julia, I mean, it's so true. You know, it's the wound of apathy. Apathy wounds.
Yes.
And it's you know, the narcissist themselves is a wounded individual, and they use this apathy as a means of disconnecting from others, but also as a means of wounding others, of discarding them.
That's right. Right.
And I guess, you know, what I see in the therapy room is daughters or sons as well, you know, who have come from apathetic parenting, understanding that they are there as a source of supply. They're there to meet the needs of the narcissist. And in a narcissistic relationship, you know, for a woman who has been either married or been in a partnership with a narcissist, the narcissist will view them as a source of supply to meet their emotional needs. So you're in a relationship with somebody who is only viewing you in terms of how you can be of value to them. And when you're no longer of value to them, when you no longer are giving them the sense of validation, the sense of attention that they so desperately crave,
Right.
The narcissist will often treat you then with apathy, with a sense of indifference, a discard, you know, just putting to one side and turning their attention elsewhere to make sure that they can get that need for supply met out elsewhere.
So let's define narcissism, because this term is thrown around a lot. And again, I look at it as a system gone wrong, where the parent of the narcissistically injured person, who then may adopt that pattern of narcissism, the parent puts their own needs before the child.
Yes.
And either they're using the person as a little parent, a little object, a little support system, fulfill their own needs, and so on, or they're ignoring them completely because they're not really that interested and connected to the child to begin with. Okay.
Absolutely.
So you can see that it's not just one type of system gone wrong. It could be a variety of different systems gone wrong, with the commonality of that child not being put first, that child not being valued, either ignored or used in the service of the parent. So I want to start to connect the dots between what you said, Christiana, and infidelity. So here we've got a mother who grooms her daughter to be of value to her, of service to her. And now we've got a beautiful, not so beautiful setup for a what the Freud. Because what's going to happen is that that daughter is going to grow up feeling uncherished, particularly if that person doesn't have a father as a role model. So father is sort of like that person who is the catcher of the wounded. So if the wounded by the mother is able to be mitigated, the mitigator of the problem. So if the father is there to mitigate the problem and cherish his daughter and give her some sense of self, then I believe that the cheating will go down because now that woman is feeling cherished. She does not feel objectified. And so she won't have as high of a propensity to be attracted to that particular blueprint. Now, if that's not the case, if father is absent, if father is not emotionally available, emotionally absent, then the daughter is left with feeling less than, feeling unlovable, maybe not special,
And
right? Yeah.
also, you know, she's made to feel that the disconnect is her fault,
Yeah.
which will play out then in, you know, relationships with narcissists later on, where the narcissist actually truly believes that it's your fault that
uh,
they've been in, you know, they've been unfaithful because you're not meeting their needs. So you need to do something about that,
oh, I
which is
think
the
that's
same.
perfectly said because it's the same old, same old. So
Yeah.
mommy blames daughter for, well, I'm treating you like this because you're not meeting my needs. And then the little child, because she's already bonded to mom, toxically bonded, but it is a hostage situation. Where's she going to go? So the only way to go is to try to please mother. And this creates a hole in the soul in her, and it creates a vampiring effect whereby she's feeding and feeding and nurturing and trying and turning herself inside out. And it doesn't work. Nobody wins because the narcissistically injured mother has a hole in the soul, and no amount of pleasing her is going to help because you see, she doesn't have that strong inner sense of self. And so when the daughter is putting in her all of these supplies, compliments, and so on and so forth, number one, the child is already running on empty because she wasn't parented. And then the mother's been running on empty. And so two empty, um, uh, 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 right, souls are trying to somehow get through this. And it ends up creating a horrible blueprint where that particular person is now groomed to enter the same dynamics as she had with her mother. Now, this applies to males as well. So we're just using the mother-daughter bond as an example, or mother-daughter lack of bond, to be more specific, as an example. So I want to go back to Dr. John Bowlby and attachment theory, and what does it mean to form a healthy sense of self? Specifically, it means that the baby is wanted, the baby is supported, mirrored, attuned to, um, ideally breastfed. That is a real plus when there's that eye contact and skin contact, and ideally spends a lot of time in the first few years of life, at least the first 2+ years of life, at home with mother or with mother most of the time, so that primary caretaker can form a bond. Now, there are other layers to this too, because it would be nice if the secondary caregiver, whether it be a father or another parent, uh, give to the giver and support the whole system. So I want everybody to understand this is a system. It's sort of like if one part of the system is not flowing, if one of the parts is disconnected, it's going to collapse the other part of the system. And then you could see it in panel 4, 5, 6. So chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. So if you don't have a parent's upholding a system and holding the family together, you see the bonds of panel number 3 are going to snap and break. You can see the illustration. What happens is the family, the kids are flying off into the ozone and the bonds are broken, and then the child desperately tries to glue the family together, as she does with her partners who are trying to push her away. She's trying to run after the partner and chase. It's very, very painful. And that's what makes it toxic, because one is using and pushing away, and the other is being triggered in the abandonment department and desperately trying to cling on. And what kind of symptoms do you see in these patients when these women come in or men come in and they're not very successful with relationships? What do you find is symptomatic with them?
Well, I think what you say there, Dr. Judy, it's all about relationships. Um, when a child is brought up with a narcissistic parent, in the attachment phase, those early phase of attachment,
Mm-hmm.
what needs to take place? There needs to be an empathy between the mother and the child, because it's empathy that connects us.
Yes.
Forms a healthy bond and a healthy relationship.
Yes.
When that is absent,
Mm-hmm.
what is exchanged instead is an apathy. And that then, like you said, sets the blueprint for future relationships that are devoid of empathy.
Right.
So they are devoid of true bonding and true healthy relationship.
I did an episode on power and control versus intimacy. Were you in particular?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. Well, Christiana's in quite a few of the YouTube videos. I really enjoy you to really make the points and give examples from your clinical work. Much appreciated. And so what is this apathy business, right? The apathy is just in plain old English. It's an emotional numbness.
Indifference.
It's an indifference. Okay, so if we were to translate it to something physical, it would be sort of like, if I step on your toes and I don't feel it, but you do, what do I care? Sorry that you're hurting, but I'm not, so that's what counts. Okay.
When I was training to be a therapist, we were constantly being reminded of the gift of empathy, and that empathy is what heals in relationships. Empathy is what forms that strong connection between one human being and another. The ability to be in the shoes of another human being, not seeking to get my needs met, but simply being there to try to understand things from the other person's perspective.
That's right.
And you see, the opposite happens in a narcissistic relationship. The narcissist, in fact, is jealous of anyone who is able to empathize with another. In other words, someone who's able to put their own needs on one side for a moment and try to attune to another. They can't do that, because everything they do is about getting their supply, getting what they need out.
Power and control versus vulnerability. They don't know vulnerability. And again, if we look at it through the mind map perspective, part one of our lives is not our fault. If we were trained to develop empathy, and how are we trained to develop empathy? We're coded with empathy through the interaction with our primary and secondary caregivers. So if that person looks us in the eyes, if that person attunes to our need, we get that deep sense of connection and caring. And so in a pre-verbal way, we're turning on the switches for connection. Okay. So if a baby is not attuned to, then they may just disconnect and avoid and curl up in a little ball, or get interested in something else other than human relationships. So bringing this back to infidelity from the point of view of narcissistic injury, you can see that it's a lot easier when you're on that other scale of narcissism to just cheat and switch partners, because you're entitled to.
And Dr. Judy, there's I think it's Heinz Kohut, who's he was a psychoanalyst in Chicago, I think it was, an Austrian psychologist, and he kind of said that narcissism is a stage of arrested development, as you often say. But you see, infidelity in that sense is akin to the narcissist stuck at, say, between age 3 and 5, something like that, where the child is narcissistic and egocentric.
Right.
Infidelity for them is like putting down one toy and going to another one because they got bored with this one.
Well put, because we go through different stages of development, and part of the stage of development is, where we're all about me, the little kid. I want the candy. No, it's all for me. I don't like to share. Okay, so it's a stage of development. So what's very confusing is that you might look at that person and say, wow, how handsome, wow, how amazing, wow, how wealthy, wow, how smart, but yet emotionally they don't have the EQ. They don't have the emotional development. And I keep repeating this, and I want everybody to understand that in order to have healthy independence, which creates a healthy me that then can join with another healthy me to form a healthy we. And if you can put up panel number 7 for a moment, I can illustrate this with my favorite panel of all, which is synergy, which is why my logo has 3 circles, interconnecting circles, is because a healthy individual has to be, the core self has to be there to join with another healthy individual, or else what are they doing? Codepending on each other, vampiring each other, filling the hole of the soul with each other. I mean, what exactly are they doing? So,
and if you think about it, Dr. Judy, with narcissism, we know that narcissists do not connect with their authentic selves. What they put out to the world is a false self. So if you are you're trying to be in a healthy relationship with a narcissist, you're actually trying to connect with their false self. So it can never work. It can never be healthy unless the narcissist is willing to let down that defense and allow their vulnerable, desperately needy inner child to come out and to be weak, to show weakness.
Very rare that happens. I did a show, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, about the double mask. Might have been last time. The double mask of narcissism. And the first layer is that wonderful, charming, love bombing person, whether it be a man or a woman. I know oftentimes we think of them as men, and I think that statistically there are more men. However, they don't come only in the male form, the female form, where you turn the faucet on and wow, it's really magical, and you think that you've met your prince or princess charming, and then pretty soon what happens is you bond to this person, you have sex with the person, you have great experiences, wonderful, thrilling events with them, and then now you're back in a hostage situation, just like you were in childhood. Okay, and so here you are, except that the charming aspects and the roses and the wine turn into bitter, sour grapes. And what was that Cinderella? Oh, with Sleeping Beauty, where the rose petals, or I have that image of the rose petals are falling off. Time is running out, right? And so the rose is not in fresh bloom, it's just sort of dried up and withering away. And that's sort of like what it is that things wither away, but the person who has been compromised by a narcissistically abusive parent will put up with this because it's familial, and the grand prize is that if they are able to cure the narcissist and flip the system around and get that person to authentically love them, then they're gonna ride off into the sunset on the white
If
horse.
only we could get back to how it was at the start, you know, when we were
Only.
really in love, you know.
That's what, there is no getting back to, because it was never built.
No,
People think that they can go
it's
back
never
to
real.
that person, but it's that double mask. Mask number one is the love bombing, and then mask number two is when the mask falls off, and then underneath all of that is this vulnerable person who doesn't really feel too good about him or herself, and so he or she has to shore up with a lot of narcissistic supply: money, beauty, fame, sex toys, and on and on and on. And that's part of why I did the show, is to really make that distinction between the narcissistic variety of infidelity and infidelity for other reasons, where a couple just sort of feels like, wow, the opportunity struck. They were at a bar. It was really, really late at night. They were tired. Somebody lap danced on them, and or other reasons where somebody in the marriage feels disconnected from. They don't have the skills and the emotional sophistication to have a peaceful
Yeah.
dialogue.
And actually, I think it's almost as if, you know, like most so-called normal, healthy people, in their core, they're wired with empathy. They're wired to really deeply connect with another. That's what we all what we yearn for.
And a person who, even if a person has had an affair, I remember I took multiple classes with Dr. Walter Brockelmans at UCLA, who was the head of couples therapy, and he is no longer. He died a few years ago, unfortunately. And I used to joke around with him, because he would always say, I'd say, "Oh, Walter, are you in love with your wife?" He goes, "Of course I'm not in love with my wife. I love my wife." And I had to think about that, because what he meant by in love was in lust, in addiction. That's what he was trying to say. Okay.
And that's so true. I think for the narcissist, though, so most of us are wired for this connection, you know, of real love, which is real intimacy. You know, into me you see. I allow you to see into me.
Love it.
But with the narcissist, well, so for healthy people, we're into me you see, which is a give take. It's a share.
Yes.
A mutual reciprocity, the synergy, as you say.
Yes.
But for the narcissist, they're wired to disconnect, and they're wired to take.
So don't see me, because I don't want you to see that little.
Even I don't see me. Even I don't want to see me.
Right, because you don't want to see that small, arrested development little child that's really
terrified child.
Terrified, and they're terrified of abandonment. Deep down inside, they have a real horrible fear that they're going to be uncovered, discovered, and tossed aside. So part of their defense mechanism, if you will, is, well, I won't get too close to you, so I'll just stay in control. There's the control. Okay. You're going to be my supply, and that works for me. So big deal. If you leave me, there's always another person or two or three, and then a lot of them will have backup plans. These covert narcissists are really good at having 2 or 3 lovers, or maybe one that they're getting married to, and then the girlfriend, they're like the monkey with the bar, they've got to hang on to one before they leap to the other, but they can't get the energy to leap to the other unless they're hanging on to that other bar. And so you become that supply to allow them to leap to the other, and then you're dropped, and and then I'll just continue along this rosy path, and then the person who's left with this toxic bond still in place will go through hell to detox from this love addiction, because now it's like a drug. Okay.
And I think also, in the process of doing that, the narcissist is leaving a trail of broken hearts, and
100%.
the way that they defend against actually facing the
Yes.
destruction that they've left is
Right.
they become apathetic. Oh, well, they shut off from emotions, and they don't need to face reality,
So
and it's really sad, in such, I was thinking that in preparing for tonight, there's narcissism is the symptom,
it
you know
is.
so the narcissist is actually displaying to us, we're having an insight into the brokenness of their childhood upbringing, and yes, we can feel compassion for them, but also we have to remember that we're not responsible for trying to heal them, because
So unless you're a therapist, right? Unless
yeah,
you're in the business of healing people, and I'm convinced, although people say no, 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 there's no healing there. I think that if somebody comes to
yeah,
therapy, mind map system, step number one, they have to understand who done it, who wounded them. They have to, the onus has to be taken off of their back to say, look, part one of your life is not your fault.
yes,
Okay. And the reason that you're numb to others, the reason your wife is leaving you is because unfortunately this thing called empathy was not built into your system. And unfortunately, because empathy for the self was not brought into the system. And so the first task is to help the person develop empathy for themselves.
yes. It starts there, doesn't
Yes, it starts there. Unless they can have the seed development of empathy for themselves, they can't put another person in the formula. It's
But
the
the
same
problem
thing.
is
Yeah.
that is going to require them to become vulnerable, and for many that is a step that they are just not willing
Well,
to
I'm
take.
thinking of a certain case, and maybe we'll leave a couple minutes for a call in. If you want to call in, please do. We do have a handful of minutes left. I'd love to hear from you. I know it'll be a brief call. I'm thinking of a case of a wonderful man who clearly exhibited narcissistic tendencies, and the wife said to him, if she'd been listening to me on YouTube, and she says, if you don't call Dr. Judy, this marriage is over. And I think he was really, really embarrassed to say, well, my wife thinks I'm a narcissist. And I said, look, back up for a minute. I look at everything as a system gone wrong. And thank you so much for allowing me to even approach your vulnerability. And so we started opening up the childhood wounds. And what we found was a very controlling parents who would only relate to them for the doing that they were, not the being that they were, parents who forced upon them certain careers and would only be proud of them if they fulfilled this. I'm saying them because it was another brother involved, set up massive sibling rivalry, okay? And so as we went through the therapy, and this doesn't always happen, okay, but in this case he allowed me in, and there was such pain and vulnerability behind the mask, and once we accessed that pain, he was able to grieve the parents that he never had, and he was able to grieve the childhood he never had, and he actually started to grow. But that's what it took. I think that people think that by confronting the narcissist, you're going to get somewhere. It doesn't work that way. You've got to go in there with heart and your own vulnerability, and you have to access the pain and access their disconnection before you start slamming them with the disconnection they have from other people and the apathy they display, that's never going to work. Okay, it's just not.
I think what you're what you're saying is so true, Dr. Judy. But I think it almost necessitates that it's within the therapeutic relationship.
Yes, it does.
Because it's boundaried.
Yes.
Naturally. Do you know what I mean? And so there's a sense of natural, healthy separateness, and it also requires a willingness on the part of the narcissist.
Yes, in the confines of the therapy, because
Yes.
they're not going to admit this vulnerability, because remember, the narcissistic defense is a hard shell. I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you, I'm richer than you, I'm more famous than you, I'm the boss, I'm in control. So that's what they want the world to see. So when their world starts to crumble, and if they have a reason for staying with their husband or their wife, they might start to say, okay, let's give this a last-ditched effort. Let's go there and see what happens. Most do not come into therapy. So if anybody wants to call in, how about now? Okay, ask away, and we'll take another couple of minutes. I know we started this show really, really late, and I'm so sorry if I lost you. Well, you won't be hearing me say that if I lost you, although maybe you'll catch the rerun of this. And again, I really want to let people know that by making the unconscious conscious, by going into the childhood pain and opening that up, and by going through this deconstruction of the emotions that literally poison a human being and allow that emotional poison to be reprocessed, we can free ourselves from the psychological prison. And that's what the mind map is for, is to identify the encoding, decode it, and shift out of it so that we can truly build that authentic sense of self.
Yeah.
And for those of you who want to contact Christiana or myself, it's easy. Christiana at psychologicalhealingcenter.com, Dr. Judy, DRJUDY, at psychologicalhealingcenter.com. And for those of you who want to grab that copy of the PDF, Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect, and there is free help with that. And also, if you would like to purchase the Mind Map video series that I created for healing from these childhood wounds that I'm talking about, that's available to you. And we are a team of people who are all thinking the same. We're systems thinkers. So anything else, Christiana, that you want to add to tonight's topic?
Well, I guess at the end of the day, it does come down to the difference between empathy and apathy. And so apathy is that sort of indifference for others, and empathy is the desire to really connect.
Yes.
And when somebody lacks that drive for empathy, although we all want that, really, even narcissists want to be able to empathize, but they
on a
can't.
one-way street because they don't know how to give it.
No,
they want
exactly.
to be empathized with, but they can't catch the light. That's another point I wanted to bring up, is even though they're soaking in the love and the attention of the other, it doesn't really land because there's this hole in the soul. So it's kind of like a bucket with a hole on the bottom, and you're pouring in your love and your attention and your compliments, and they just want more. Oh, okay, now I'm empty again. Fill me up again. What, you're not.
And there's nothing more. I think nothing more painful in life than to have gone through life living it as a false self. I can only imagine that once you get to the end of your life and look back, there must be, I think then is when the hole in the soul really comes to the fore.
Right, when they run out of supply, when they're no longer good looking or rich or able to capture the attention of, it's a very sad ending because, as I was saying to a patient today, it's like a psychological bank account. Okay, if people put into you, then you will have desire to care for them, especially in their old age. Do you know how many people are sitting in old age homes for many reasons, but one of the reasons is because they weren't nurturing parents, and now the children have nothing left to give these parents. It's very, very sad for them. So I know we've got to end in a minute. Again, I apologize that we started so late. Technical problems, we'll try to solve them. And I'm the worst tech person, so I'll leave it up to the tech people. And Christiana, thank you as always for being on air with
Pleasure.
and sharing your great
Thank you
work.
for having me.
Yes, my pleasure. And I'll see everyone next week. And if you like this channel, please press the subscribe button and then you'll be notified. Thank you so much for tuning in. Good night, everyone.
This